reasons, but yeah.
All right, everyone, we're live on YouTube now.
Okay, thank you. So I have the time of 2:01 p.m. on October 28th, 2020. So let me call to order the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust. Due to the current state of emergency declared by the governor because of the COVID-19 virus and the governor's directive 021, this committee will be conducting this meeting remotely, which should be pretty obvious at this point. And we will receive public comment via email only. And so with that call to order, I will ask Val to take the roll call. Val, you're muted. We can't hear Val. Uh-oh, and we lost Gordon.
It looks like Gordon dropped off our meeting. I'll watch out for him when he tries to rejoin, Mark.
Okay. There we go. There he comes. Val, we can't hear you still, so maybe if you want to drop off and then come back, I'll take roll call since that's pretty easy. I can do that. I almost heard you. Okay, so Gordon Salas, are you with us?
Is that a yes?
Are you speaking to me, Gordon?
Yes. Yes. Just wanted to verify your attendance. You are here. We need you to say yes. There you are, Gordon.
There we are.
Gordon is here. I'm here. So at the current moment, we only have 2 of the 3 positions on the trust filled, so we are all here. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda item 1.04?
I, Gordon Salas, move that we accept the agenda.
Okay, I'll second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item 2.01 then is approval of the minutes of June 25th, which was our last committee meeting. Gordon, did you have any changes to those minutes at all?
I have no changes, and I move that we accept those minutes as read.
Okay, I will second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, on to more exciting business. Item 2.02 is approval of the annual request to authorize the transfer and expense of funds from the Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Fund pursuant to Nevada Administrative Code, not to exceed $5,990,019. So I will turn it over to Robbie to explain that.
Right. So this is Robbie Carson for the record. This is an annual approval process that the board needs to go through to authorize the Washoe County School District staff to transfer money from the trust to the district to pay the bills. This is something that is based off of the final budget for the year and then approved by the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees and then sent to you for your final approval. So in this packet, you'll have a letter signed by Melina Raymond, who's the president of the Board of Trustees, and it details what the use of funds is. It's up to $3.6 million for payments to Nevada Post-Employment Benefits Program, up to $1.64 million for the retiree medical subsidies to be reimbursed to the health insurance fund, and up to $750,000 for the life insurance subsidy. Also in this packet, you'll have a copy of the budget that just details these expenditures that were authorized. And then the minutes from the August 11th, 2020 Board of Trustees meeting where they approved this in the consent agenda.
So I think it's pretty straightforward, but Gordon has a little bit of background, or maybe just to repeat what Robbie said. The law requires the employer, in this case, the school district's board, to request reimbursement of eligible other post-employment benefits by the trust. And so this is basically the formal request to access funds of the trust fund in order to reimburse these retiree medical costs. And so we do that once a year to give us kind of authorization throughout the year to reimburse these costs as they come and as we deem necessary. And so as a board member, a trustee of the trust, we need to approve that request in order for district staff to access those funds.
Understood. Are you awaiting a motion to accept?
Unless you had any questions about the items or anything else, yes.
Okay, I don't have any questions at this time. I make a motion that we accept the transfer of funds as required by law.
Okay, I will second that motion. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, the next item Robbie will present as well. It's item 2.03, discussion of the trust fund's fiscal year 2020 fourth quarter financial statements.
All right, so thank you, Mark. And if you would like, I can put these statements up on the screen for you. That way
That'd
we
be great.
can go through
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, that'd be excellent. Thanks.
All right. And can everybody see that up there?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so the first statement we have is a comparative statement of net position. This is the balance sheet. You'll see our net position at the end of the year is 64 million versus 59 million at the end of fiscal year 2019. So we actually were able to keep the fund balance up in fiscal year 20. And that relates to better than expected earnings on the trust, which was a little scary that we talked about in the last meeting. But towards the end of the year, we actually made some pretty good gains with the trust investments with RBF, and we'll be able to go through some of those on the next one. The other thing, you'll see this $3.8 million account receivable in there. And what that is, district staff had made the decision to not take the funds for the Nevada post-employment benefits plan from the trust this year in FY20. So we're just reimbursing the trust with that 3.8 million that was already paid out. So that also helped keep the fund balance up. So so the trust is not living off interest earnings alone and dividend earnings. So that is the biggest change in why we're able to actually grow the fund balance by about $5 million in the last fiscal year. So, and then the other part, there's this accounts payable down here for a little over $1 million. And that's a reimbursement to the health insurance fund for the life insurance implicit subsidy. So that one, we came to a decision rather late on that one as the district staff, and then it just shows as a payable because it wasn't done by the end of the year. I'll be happy to answer any questions on that statement if we have any. No?
I don't have any.
Okay. If we flip over to the next page in the packet, this is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and change in net position for the income statement in the private sector. And so we just detail how we got to where we're at on the fund balance. So we have the budget, we have the fiscal year to date and then the variance, and then also a comparison to the last fiscal year. So we have earnings on investments of about $1.3 million, a realized gain of about 1.7, and those are actually kind of unexpected during the pandemic. We were starting to get a little scared there because around April and March, we were starting to see losses in all of those. But it turned around, and at the end of the year, we finished with a pretty healthy gain on the investments that we had in the RBF. And then we also had $2 million of contributions by the employer. So that helped boost up the revenues. And then again, the expenditures, you'll see the difference between fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020. And this is where the decision was made not to make the payments to Nevada post-employment benefits out of the trust. So that helped boost up that fund balance. And so we get the difference between revenues and expenditures and add it to the beginning net position. And that's how we come up with the $64 million fund balance at the end of the year.
Okay, Robbie, I have a question.
Yeah.
That additional realized gain, just so I'm clear in my mind, that was because of a turnaround in the investment portfolio?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So around May and June, they actually started making gains as things rebounded from the pandemic shutdown and stocks started going up. So the investments actually started growing quite a bit towards the end of the year, which was a nice turnaround.
I don't know if this question should go to you, Robbie, or to Mark, but in the event when the market was going down, what mechanisms are in place to protect what revenue we do have? Is that a decision that the Public Employees Management Group decides to make, or is that with input from Mark?
That's a great question, Gordon. You get an A for that. So one of the primary functions of the OPEB Trust Board, i.e. you and me right now,
Right.
is the investment of these assets. And we have a choice about how we invest these assets. We have chosen to more or less be a passive investor in Nevada PERS Retirement Benefits Fund, RBF is what we call it. That was investment vehicle specifically created to allow OPEB trusts to invest in the stock market. So normally as a public entity, a local government entity, I should say, we're restricted to fixed income bonds, which, as you know, are earning just, less than 1% now.
Mm-hmm.
And so statutes were amended to allow OPEB trusts to invest in the stock market, either through, as a passive investor through RBF, or we can choose to construct our own investments and use an outside investment manager if we chose. Right now, being a passive investor in RBF, they're on autopilot, and I don't mean that pejoratively, but they take a very long-term view and maintain their asset allocation of 60% equities, 40% bonds, always. If we ever felt like we wanted to take a more defensive position and protect our earnings, or conceivably be more aggressive, not be a 60-40, kind of garden variety portfolio, we could actually vote to do that, Gordon. And that, again, that's a key decision that is entirely in the hands of the OPEB Trust. That is their primary function, although I don't know any OPEB trusts other than the county and now today us that have actually really considered that. But if we ever got to that point where we had a strong conviction that the stock market is pretty frothy and oversold and is due for a major pullback, we would have to exit RBF and select an outside investment manager to help manage those monies per state law, and then pursue whatever asset allocation mix of stocks and bonds we want.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that explanation. my concern would be preservation more than aggressive portfolio. And I like the 60-40, but I just kind of needed an educational understanding of how this whole process works. So thanks again, Mark.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because again, we do have a blended portfolio. I guess I assume, Robbie, that realized gains really are mostly the stock market, relate to the stock market positions we have. Although it could have realized gains of bonds that we sell prior to maturity, and then the bonds are generating the unrealized gains and the earnings on investments. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty sure you're right on that one.
Okay. So we, because bonds have, bonds yields have fallen, i.e. their prices have gone higher. In a way, our current bond holdings show a nice unrealized gain there of 760,000, but that's just a paper gain, right? The only way you're going to achieve that gain is if you sell those securities before maturity. But it is the current mark-to-market price of those bonds versus the book value that we purchased on that. But anyhow, it was another good year. Don't know how many more good years we're going to have, but it was another good year.
Okay, good.
And Mark, you can see that stark difference between June 30th, 2020 and June 30th, 2019.
Yeah.
Where we had the realized gain of 1.7, but a realized loss of $60,000 in 19. But we had the unrealized gain of $3 million. So it kind of boosted it, but it's not necessarily real money, whereas the 1.7 is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, good point. Yeah.
So, and Gordon, we'll get to the RBF, the Retirement Investment Fund. We'll get to their allocations in the next agenda item with their performance over the year. So,
thanks, Robbie.
no problem. So if we have no more questions on that one, we have one more slide for this agenda item. And so this is just a summary of the changes to the RBF account for our participation units. And we have a point in time as of June 30th and then fiscal year to date. So as you can see, there's the $1.7 million realized gain. We did have some interest income, some dividend income, and then the $767,000 change in unrealized appreciation. So that's the unrealized gain that we had. And then for the fiscal year, we had $2.5 million worth of disbursements out of the trust for last fiscal year. So this is at the point in time in June 30th, 2020, we had $60 million invested in the Retirement Benefits Investment Fund. The other $4 million was receivables in cash. So that's the difference between the $64 million fund balance and the $60 million that you see here. But in the investments, we started the fiscal year with just under 59 million, and we finished over $60 million in there. And then the $3 million or almost $4 million in receivables was sent back to the trust to be reinvested so we could earn on that one too. It just happened later in the year or early in the next fiscal year. So.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Okay. That was just for information and discussion. So I think we're ready to move on to 2.04, and I see I got my asset allocation percentages wrong, but I could have sworn they were 60-40 at one point, but anyhow, go ahead, Robbie.
Thanks, Mark. So on here, this is just their summary performance by the RBF that they've done. So they have their target allocation listed here, plus their market value listed. And this is all agencies that have their money invested in it. So they have total investments. The market value is 603 million. So we have, a tenth of that chunk. The rest of it's made up of the county, Clark County School District, anybody that elected to participate in that. So their target allocations, 50% in the US stock market, 21% in international stocks, and then the remaining 28% in the US bond index. And then the next column over is their actual allocation that they had as of June 30th. So they're pretty close to their targets. They were kind of moving stuff around and trying to get the most bang for their buck. And then you'll see the fiscal year-to-date return on there, and you'll see the US stock market. That one gave you a pretty good return on there. The international stock market, that one took a pretty sizable hit, and most of that would be related to the pandemic and the slower recovery otherwise. And then the bond index had a very high return on it. So we ended up with a fiscal year-to-date return of 6.7% on the investments, which is absolutely incredible. So.
Well, and Robbie, I totally agree. And Mark, if I think given the looking at this retirement benefit investment fund on 204, seeing that we're in 3 different entities or vehicles of investment, that kind of played well as opposed to the 60-40 that you originally had thought we were in, I would think. Would you agree that, I mean, we did take a loss in one of those vehicles, but fortunately we were diversified into the U.S. market, stock market, and the U.S. bonds. So I guess that's kind of a good misunderstanding to have.
Yeah, I guess so. Thanks, Gordon. I appreciate that.
I meant it as a compliment, by the way.
No, and I think listen, for the last 10 years, I think a lot of money managers have questioned the allocation to bonds, and it's kind of funny how the accounting of the investment returns goes, because we really didn't get 10.2% yield on our fixed income securities. That includes the price appreciation, but so be it. I just, the Fed has lowered interest rates to basically 0%,
Right.
in hopes of encouraging, I think, people to go into other asset classes. And so I know for a long time there's been a real, intense discussion of, does the allocation to fixed income accomplish what, kind of the purpose is? And we could have that debate forever, I guess. But, again, this is, we choose to be in RBF. We don't have to be. So at some point, it's probably worthy of a longer discussion, and just, we can bring in Nevada PERS staff, if you like, to explain how they do what they do. If that's something you want to do, because 60 million or more than that now that we have in this investment vehicle is a lot of money. And so if you ever thought, Gordon, gee, I'm not sure this asset allocation really matches my risk tolerance or kind of what I see in terms of future expenses of post-employment benefits, that's a worthy discussion. So
I thank you, Mark. I think as we began earlier today, before we were on record, and perhaps we'll talk about this a little bit more, but once we get our committee, if we are so fortunate to bring that, besides myself and you and maybe 3 other individuals onto this committee, it would definitely be somewhat of a study or a retreat or something. Just sit down and talk about all of the options that might be available to us. But between you and I certainly wouldn't ever suggest that without having a heart-to-heart conversation with you about it, Mark.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, good. It'll be a good discussion for the future, as you say, when we fill the current vacancy and then consider changes in item 2.05. So,
and reflecting on the past 7 months, we've done pretty well considering the economy as it's been, like Robbie pointed out early. So rather than beat this horse, I'll just let us move on. But thanks for hearing me out.
Sure thing. Okay, item 2.05 is a really important action item for us. This is to discuss and recommend to the Board of Trustees to increase the membership on the Board of Trustees of the OPEB Trust from the current 3 members to 5 is allowed by law and is allowed by the trust agreement itself. So Robbie's been real good about here flashing up the section of the trust agreement in question here. Law requires at least 3 members, and we do have 1 vacancy currently due to the unfortunate death of Tom Marshall. But I think the last couple of years has shown me that it would be helpful to increase the membership from 3 to 5 of the committee, just to allow Val an easier time to schedule meetings and let people take vacations and do other things that they need to do and still be able to schedule something. So Robbie, I don't know if you have any, maybe if you can walk both of us through here, the constitution of the membership.
Sure. So right now we fall under Section A of Article 6 because the trust fund is investments in the RBF as provided by NRS 355.220. You can have at least 3 members, but no more than 5 members, and it must include at least one of all of these 3 criteria. So at least 1 member who has a combination of education and experience, 5 years in experience or economics, a public officer or employee of the district who manages the fiscal affairs of the district, which that would be Mark, and a beneficiary of the trust. So that would be Gordon's spot on that one, I believe. So what we need to fill to get back to the 3 would be the member who has a combination of education and experience. And then I think if you voted to approve the increase to 5 members, it could be any combination of these 3 out of those 2.
Okay. So again, I think the idea here going from 3 to 5 members of the board of trustees would simply be to, well, I mean, allow, like I say, I guess, easier participation and having a quorum a little bit easier than we can at now. But also, you know, I don't think it hurts to have a few more people involved in discussions like the last item, right?
I totally agree.
So that's the concept. It's taken me a little while to get there, but I'm there. And then the second change, for whatever reason, previously our terms, Gordon, were set at just 2 years. So we had to be reappointed every 2 years by the Board of Trustees, and we can have terms up to 4 years long. And I just think, you know, I mean, not that you can't resign anytime you want, but I think it's just easier to have 4-year terms and, you know, reduce the kind of going to the board every 2-year process we've been in. So that is also an item to consider under item 2.05, is just increasing our term from 2 to 4.
I have no objection to that. I think your reasoning is worthwhile to consider.
Okay. So we would need a motion to make either or both of those changes, increasing the membership from 3 to 5 members and changing the duration of the terms from 2 to 4 years.
And you would make that presentation to the board?
I would. It probably would be a consent item, but if they had questions, I'd certainly be happy to explain our reasoning. Or Robbie can, for that matter.
Okay. Okay, you were breaking up just a little bit, but I think I understood what I would make hers, although one is vacant, to 5, and that we include that membership from a 2-year term to a 4-year term of service.
Okay, I will second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Val, I think I went out of order here. I did not ask you about public comment 1.03. So let me ask you, did you receive any public comments online at all?
I did not.
Okay. So turning to item 3.01, public comment. Have you received any public comments since the beginning of this meeting?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Item 3.2 is announcement of our next meeting. We are scheduled for Thursday, January 28th of next calendar year. It'll be so good to get 2020 behind us.
Yes,
So hopefully that works for you, Gordon.
it is on my calendar, 28th, and I don't recall the specific time. I know Val has been working very hard to corral me, and I appreciate you, Val, for doing that.
Thank you. It's 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Okay, I'll write it down here. I have it in my phone, but I'm using my phone right now, so I thank you, Val.
You're welcome.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, Gordon. I appreciate